Good evening, everyone. Let us chant Namo Tassa before the start of the session. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So we are to continue with the last section with regards to the Indriya Bhavana that we were discussing over the past 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Right. So last week, we went over, of course, what we discussed on week 2. We discussed the definitions of what Sankha, the conditioned, Olarika, gross, Paticcasamuppanna, conditioned by many things. And then, of course, today we have Anicca. And today we have to go over Anicca, right? And Anicca and how we would practically sort of see whilst or as we practice what we would see or how we would contemplate on Indriya Bhavana is an additional part that we should discuss today. All right? Okay. So, with regards to what we have discussed already, that is last week, Paticcasamuppanna, and of course, Olarika Sankhata and the methodology behind these techniques. Do we have any questions? Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask with regards to what we have already spoken of? Any questions that have arose? Yes, Devika, you're muted. You will have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Bhante, last time at the end of the session, we talked about the Olarika, Sukuma, Rupa, and we went down. And then I have written there for the next class that we are going to talk about Olarika again.
Ah, okay, okay.
And then Paticcasamuppanna and then Anitya.
Okay.
But
okay.
yes.
Okay.
But we did talk about Olarika a little bit. Earlier you said internal physical sense organ and external thing and grows that which impinges upon the 5 senses, you said.
Yes.
Then experience with touch, earth, wind, and fire. Like that you went on.
Yes. And that is the last bit?
Yes. And then we talked about Sukuma.
Yes.
Is which thus refers to nature of the mind.
Yes.
Mind object, mind consciousness, which is what is experienced through the 3 mind, consciousness and water, it says.
Okay. Okay.
Then we talked about the, inferior undesirable physical objects and the superior desirable physical sense objects. And then you said far and near. Far is subtle objects, difficult to understand, and near is gross objects. I write down everything that you're saying.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much, because now I don't have to do the summary. Right. Right. Okay, so we've discussed that part. And we also touched on what Sukuma, what Olarika is and what Sukuma is.
Yes.
Sukuma relating to the mind, right?
Yes.
And yes, the mind objects. Wonderful. Thank you, Devika, for the reminder. Right. So now to brush up on the practice again, the four contemplations is Sankhata, Olaraka, Paticcasamuppanna, and Anicca. The contemplation is essentially being aware of these aspects within the sense experience. The sense experience being the Indriya, the six sense bases, perceive objects, Indriya, objects, and Sanya, right? And the Sanya coming into it through Yorso Manasikara or Ayonso Manasikara, the perceival of what has now been grasped by the Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jibha, Kaya, and Mano Vinyanas. All of these form what we know to be the sense experience. It is the sense experience which arises within us, which is now, or the contemplation of Sankata, conditioned, Olarika, gross, Paticcasamuppanna, conditioned by many factors, and Impermanence is directed towards. Right. So now we come to, I think we went on a long sort of discussion also, isn't it, about where the Sanya comes in and where we spoke about that aspect of it as well. And now we come on to the Paticcasamuppanna. Now, Paticcasamuppanna dependently arising on many other factors or many factors. This relates to the natures behind any conditioned phenomena. ඕනෑම සංකත ධර්මයක තුල තිබෙන යථාර්ථ ස්වභාවය, which is that essentially one result is not the result of just one cause, but can have many causes. One effect does not necessarily need to have one cause. It can arise because of many causes, right? Just as the fact of us being wrapped in layers these days is not because of just one cause of it simply being cold, but it is also the fact of how expensive heating is, right? And how absurd it might be to pay such prices for heating, right? So we see a lot of causes, not just one. We can go into more, we can explore more and find so many other causes affecting this moment right here, right now. Paticcasamuppanna. The more causes that govern that one effect means that effect can be sorted, or it can change very fast when one of the causes for it changes, right? One of the causes for it changes. Now, in that essence, when we look at the practice itself, the Vipassana practice itself, what might we be able to determine? Within the Kama Loka, the Kama Loka is a plane of existence where all of these spheres, all of these different planes within the sphere of karma or the sensuous sphere, our livelihood or our reasons of life are determinant on the karmas, the sensuous pleasures. These sensuous pleasures are by nature conditioned. Right? These sensuous pleasures are by nature conditioned. For example, if we are to take a lolly, right? the taste that that lolly has is dependent upon the ingredients, the way it is made, all of these reasons. Now, that result within the Kamaloka and anything to do in the Kamaloka, what we then understand it to be from a practitioner's perspective is things in the Kamaloka being so gross, being so conditioned, is heavily prone to change, heavily, right? The more grosser the Kamaloka is, just as, for example, remember, in the Aganya Sutra, when the Buddha speaks about the way in which the first beings arose within the human realm, the beings, after having consumed or getting used to consumption of nutrition over a long period of time, what happened? The bodies itself became olarika and kept on becoming olarika. The grossness of the body increased through the times. The more the physical body and the mind becomes entrapped within a sphere where its continuity is impacted so heavily with those or that which is conditioned, everything changes so fast. Now, this is an important point, everyone. Make a bhavanaave godak වැදගත් කොටසක්. Why is that? Because what is the difference? Then we come to this. What is the difference, right, in comparison between, now we are letting go of the olarika, but letting go will not happen if we do not have a better thing to grasp onto. That is how our human minds work, right? We will let go if our meditation is doing good. We will let go of something which is gross if we have a better type of sensation or feel from something else, right? That is where Shraddha, Sati, Prachna, all of these are the predominant factors, right, which takes us on a certain journey led by these factors. When that certain factor comes, Shraddha වැඩි වෙන්න, අර ශ්‍රද්ධාවෙන් අපි උපයෝගී කරගන්න අර සතුට තමයි දැන් අපේ ජීවිතේ දුවන්නේ. Right? When we look at Pratnya, when the Pratnya aspect is so strong, what happens is the Pratnya starts becoming the driving force in our life. So we are able to let go of things wholly based on the fact of understanding, right? In such a manner, in our meditation, during the practice of Indriya Bhavana, as we observe these different elements of the sensuous sphere, being Chakusota Gana Jiva Kaya Mana Ramana, this sense experience is let go of for a certain reason. What is that reason? That reason, this is vipassana. This is not conceptual. This is vipassana. What is that reason? That reason being the bliss that comes out of the non-gross. The bliss that comes in connection with things. Now, if we talk about paticca-samuppanna, if paticca-samuppanna is something that changes so rapidly, there is bliss within the experience or living within a state which doesn't change so rapidly. Do you understand what I mean? Right? If something is conditioned, if we take food, if you are to leave it outside, or if you are not to cook it properly, or if you cook it too much, right, it might go bad. It can go bad quite fast, right? Now, clinging to food or basing our happiness on something such as food in comparison to something which will not go bad. Do you get what I mean? right? Anything, sankata, olarika, paticca samuppanna, right? These three categories, how do we move on? We move on through that vipassana, that insight that says the peace that is derived in living within the present, where the mind is not dependent upon these sankata dhammas for our prolonged happiness. A mind that does not cling on to is but able to observe the nature, but the mind is truly focused on what? Not the sensuous plane objects, but objects of the, for example, rupa plane, arupa plane, and the supramundane plane. Do you understand? Is that clear? As we observe, we realize, now let us take an example. We cling on to something that is entirely and utterly gross, right? Let us say a view, a ditthi that is entirely and utterly gross. Just thinking about it, when we have a ditthi, let us say, we cling on to the rigid clinging to cultural norms. The rigid clinging to cultural norms. Now, this is not to say that cultural norms are not important, but this is to say that we rigidly expect that our families or friends would practice these cultural norms just because this is a ditthi, make a drushtiyak. Now, when you have, now let us say this. Now, let's take that example. Now, you practicing the cultural norm is not enough. Your family must want to practice it. Your friends must want to practice it. Your distant relatives must practice it. Now, your happiness is conditioned not only by your action, but the actions of yourself, your family, your friends, and even your distant relatives. Now, it is not only one causing you unhappiness and grief in your life because of this rigid attachment to cultural norms, but it is also the actions of other people who, as mature persons with emotional intelligence, would understand we cannot control other people. Do you understand? Now, to this example, let us say you are concerned with 10 people who you think should practice these cultural norms that you believe in. Ditthi. The emotional stress that would come out of 10 people is more in comparison to if you had 8 people to concern yourself with. Right? The emotional strife and grief to do with 5 people is lesser than the 8 people. The emotional grief and strife in comparison to 4 people, 3 people, 2 people, no person is lesser in comparison to that 8, 7, 6. Do you understand, everyone? This is that vipassana insight that comes about through what? Through the Indriya Bhavana, ara sankata olarika paticca samuppanna anitya කියන මේ ගති තුලින් දැන් විදර්ශනාවෙන් අපිට තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් මොකක්ද? අර දේවල් කෙරෙහි තියෙන ඇලීම අත්හැරියාම, එවැනි බලාපොරොත්තු අපි අත්හැරියාම අපේ ජීවිතේ ඊට වඩා සැනසීමක්, සතුටක් සතුටට වඩා මෙතන තියෙන සැනසීම. Right? මෙතන තියෙන සැනසීම. But because if we use the word happiness, remember everyone, happiness will always come with suffering. Expectation of happiness will always come with suffering. Right? And of course, in this world that we live in, with social media and all of these motivational speakers, and everyone is telling us to be happy. But this happiness is also an epidemic in this world. Everyone wants to be happy, but happiness will always be followed front and back by pain. Right? We know that. Right? Hence, this is sanasima. Peace, right? Peace. It is that peace. Now, that is a worldly example. Did everyone understand that example, please? Anyone who didn't? Yes, Dil, but I cannot hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Just 2 things. So now I perfectly understand what you have told here. This sanasima, you said was peace. Has contentment got to do anything, or is it just peace, or is it both synonymous?
This is contentment, and peace in this regard is different.
Right.
It's different, right? Contentment would be to do with the experience of the present, whatever which is of the present. Peace comes out of, peace is a result of non-attachment, non-expectation, right? That is the peace result there. Okay?
So that is why they say that if you really think of, somebody explained, I can't remember who the monk was, but somebody in Sinhalese said, Dukkha kiyane balaporottuwa kaduna. Expect any, that is what dukkha is, balaporottuwa kaduna. So that's what you're elaborating here, Bhante, right? Thank you very much. Understood. Yeah, very clear. Thank you.
Yes. So, in this regard, everyone, now let us go deeper. Let us not stop there. That is not enough, everyone. Let us not stop there. We must go deeper, right? Because we can. Now, that is, if our lives, if it is to take a simile of a person having to go a long journey with a heavy weight on their shoulders, obviously, a journey with no weight or not much to carry is far more comfortable than a journey where you have to carry a lot of weight. Do you understand? Hence, me bara adukama ape jeevitheta ඇති වෙන්නේ this lightness, this liberated feel through this lightness arises out of the fact of now not being so affected by things that are which are by nature prone to change, right? Coming back to the example, the before example, in comparison with the dikti view, if we do not have the expectation that others will fulfill or will do all of these things, then of course there are lesser things that can disturb our peace, right? Disturb our peace. This is not in any way to do with denigration or pushing things away. This is all to do about understanding. That understanding, everyone, arises through direct contemplative awareness, right? Direct contemplative awareness. Now, if we are to go deeper, now that sense of peace arises in our life because we did not have expectations. We did not have expectations, or we choose to not have expectations because we know that our expectations do not govern the world. That this world occurs again and again through their own natures. right? As we then move on in our practice, then we go on to the rupa states, right? The rupa states, which is beyond the hold of the sensuous sphere. Some don't need to go into the rupa state. Some are advanced in mind where they can go directly into the lokottara. But in this time and day and age, because of the heavy weight of the sankharas and our dependency upon the sankharas, we find that the rupas are very supportive. The rupas, in the sense, the rupa jhanas are very supportive towards the practice with the samatha and the samadhi. So we now cling on to something which is more enduring. The word is enduring, right? More enduring. The samadhi. As we have learned already so many times through Sutra and Abhidhamma of the nature of the jhana, we know that vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagatha. As we progress, what happens? The grossness of these factors reduce up until we are able to reach the fifth jhana. The fifth jhana matures into the arupa jhanas. And then the arupa jhanas mature into, of course, can mature into, if chosen to, into vidarshana. Now, for the sake of study and for the sake of the vipassana practice, I'm going to omit the rupa and arupa jhana and go directly into, from laukika bhumi into lokottara vipassana. Okay, everyone? Are we on the same page? Okay. Any questions up until this point? Okay. Now, as we let go, now this letting go, everyone, is important. Why? Because that is the only way. If the ship is focused upon the shore, the ship will be unable to explore the horizon. Right? We are like a ship in shallow waters, focusing on the shore, but hoping that we end up in the horizon. That is not going to happen. Right? Hence, the Indriya Bhavana through the Satipatthana, it allows for a person to slowly maneuver ourselves, pull up the anchors that we have towards the shore to keep us at shore, at bay, and to set off towards the greater horizons. This happens in this manner for a practical, and we are going to discuss a practical approach, which is when we let go, when we contemplate on Sankata Olaraka Parijsampanna Anicca of Chakkusota Gahana Jivha Kaya, what will happen as a result, a direct result of this, when you do it for a couple of weeks, if you're committed, something that we will experience is we will be more aware. We will definitely be more aware, because the sankharas that we are choosing to cultivate through our daily motions is going to be lesser and lesser and lesser. As you progress upon it, you're not going to be creating more sankharas. That's the most important thing, everyone. Api prayogikava, manasin api hitagannawa, මේ ජීවිතයේ තියෙන මේ එක මේ ලෞකික දේවල් නෙමෙයි වැදගත්, මේ ලෝකෝත්තර දේවල් ටික තමයි ඇත්තටම වැදගත් කියන දෙය. ඒ දෙය තුල අපි යම්කිසි ස්ථාවරයක් හදා ගන්නවා. We develop a foundation of understanding on the fact and regard that This mundane world is so impermanent. This mundane world changes so fast. There are bliss. There is a bliss far beyond the bliss of lust and anything that can be created through the Chakusota Gahana Jiva Kaya of this sensuous plane. So let me not cling into this poor types of pleasures. Let me aim higher to the more sublime of states, the lofty states, the supramundane. This is ekane එක හිතකින්ම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන හෝ යම්කිසි අදිෂ්ඨානයක් මනසේ තියෙන්න ඕන. තේරුණාද? Because anyone who wants to progress, right, will have to consciously make that determination. What is that determination? I am not going to cling on to these poor, lowly, poor pleasures. I'm going to aim higher. I want to progress into the more lofty supramundane states, right? Api patangannota, when we start, everyone, we might surely be doing it for the bliss, which is fine. Because the bliss of Vipassana is so powerful and transformative that what happens in the process is when we eat high quality foods, we see the result of that food within our bodies, isn't it? When we eat nutritious, good food that is not poor, right, of poor quality, we will see that result within our bodies. We will right, but we will see that result. Just so in the beginning we might just practice because of the pleasure of it. That is fine, but that conscious determination has to be made. When that is done, and when the bonds of how we are bounded to Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jiva, Kaya are slowly severed, right? Then the Manodvara becomes powerful. This is important. The mind, though, has to become powerful, everyone. It is when the Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jiva, Kaya is more powerful than the mind has no say. We are too distracted with the 5 physical sense bases. So what happens? The physical sense bases are like that anchor that keeps the ship at shore and bay. Right? First, what must we do? Pull up that anchor. Pulling up that anchor is severing the bonds, the dependencies that we have upon Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jiva, Kaya, Rammana. Do you understand? Then the mind, though, becomes powerful. The mind, though, becomes strong. In the beginning, when the mind, though, becomes strong, we do face certain issues and problems. We become very emotional, right? We become very sensitive. We become far more sort of aware about what people are saying, and all of these things, right? Far more alert on all of these things. But that is just the initial phase. We learn to balance these things out. Why? Not that we are going to solve each and every problem. We continue Sankatai, Olarikai, Paticcasamupannai, Anityai. Right? Anityai. Because although the mind base is now powerful, the mind is still based upon that, the feeding, the nutrition that it has received from the 5 physical sense bases. Do you understand? ඒ අර ගති වලට තියෙන නැඹුරත්වය තාම තියෙනවා. Right? Then what happens? As we continue, right? As we continue, and it need not be a long process. this will all be dependent upon how bad you want it, everyone. It truly is dependent on how bad you want it, right? Dependent upon your determination, your virya, what will happen is the mind will now, the manaram, the manodvara, will now become able to focus on kilesa, right? What happens? Focusing, what is the focusing on kilesa? Focusing on kilesa is, sorry, focusing on kilesa is that thing that annoyed us, that thing that made us feel fragile and hurt, right? Now what do we begin to see? We begin to see the qualities: agitation, restlessness, doubt. Do you understand? Kama chanda vyapada tina midda uddacha kukkucha vichikicha. Me gati tika දැන් අපිට පැහැදිලිව පේන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. Right? We clearly, with clarity, we begin to see the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances. As we begin to see the 5 hindrances, what do we continue upon? Right? There's still the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances are agitated by that which is conditioned, that which is olaraka, that which is paticcasamuppanna, and that which is anicca. Right? We continue on that. Now, in this part, during this time, there are 2 ways that you can do it. Right? One is Shraddha, right? Shraddha, which is, what is the Shraddha method? Shraddha method is a continuous contemplation of the Sankata Olarika Paticcasamuppanna Anicca. ඒ කියන්නේ මොන දේ වුණත් අපි තුල ශ්‍රද්ධාව තියෙනවා නෑ මේ දේමයි සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ මේ දේමයි සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ පේනවා ශ්‍රද්ධා ගතිය. Do you understand ශ්‍රද්ධා ගතිය? Is it clear? Yeah? මොන දේ වුණත් මෙන්න මේ දේ තමයි මෙතන තියෙන්නේ මේ දේ තමයි මෙතන තියෙන්නේ මේ දේ තමයි මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. Right? At a moment if you say no but you know this is happening අන්න ශ්‍රද්ධාව අඩු වුණා. Do you understand, everyone? Again, during a split moment, when the pain increases or when it's getting too personal, right? At one point, you might now break your practice and say, no, but you know, this is happening. You know, you get what I mean, right? You give into it, right? You give into it. That, what happens there? The Shraddha breaks. The Atma becomes predominant. The self becomes predominant, the Shraddha breaks. The practitioner realizes this and re-energizes the Shraddha. No, but truly, this is what is happening. Do you understand? The other way is Pratnya. Pratnya is a contemplation of its actuality. Make a බලන විදියත් වෙනස්. It's not the same, right? It's not the same. The way you view it, the way you put it into practice is also different. How is it different? Now in Shraddha, you re-advert when you're visibly seeing it through experience. You apply, this is this, right? The Prachna is more me de thulla e yatharthe hataganna. Meaning, you see, now let us take a certain emotion, of, let's say, hatred or some sort of friction. It arises and then it prolongs. You see yourself going, you know, or you don't realize it at first, and then you see yourself going with it for a bit of time. and then you come to realize it and it fades away, another thing arises. This goes on, that also fades away. Now through this experience itself, you realize, this is anitya. Right? ඒ යථාර්ථය තුලින් දැන් මේ අනිත්‍යතාවය නැමැති මේ යථාර්ථය පැහැදිලි වෙනවා. Do you understand? Right? The Shraddha is when you apply it again. Do you understand? You're applying, this is impermanent, this is impermanent, this is impermanent. You're applying it there, contemplating on the impermanence there again and again and again and again. Monoma bunat, we apply it. That's a Shraddha element there. Do you understand? Is that clear? Del, you want to ask something? Del, you're muted.
So you keep on reapplying that Shraddha. But in Prajna, now you contemplate the actuality. So in other words, what I couldn't understand, what comes first? Is it that the way you view it and you look at it, now the Yatatha is the way it actually is, isn't it? Like Yata Bhutanam, Yatatha is the way it really is. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So if you say that the way you actually view it, does that give you the insight of anicca? Is that what you're saying? That, or does the insight of anicca come and therefore you see the actuality of it? I wasn't sure about
the second.
The second.
The first one in Shraddha, whatever happens, right? This should be this. Led by that energy, right? You advert the contemplation to the contemplation through whatever aramana that arises. The Prachna, what happens is, the Prachna is a more balanced state because the Prachna there needs to be more balanced there, right? In the Prachna, what happens is that you are able to sort of realize the actuality, the reality of it through what is happening. Do you understand?
Yeah, so in other words, it's an insight.
It's an insight, but okay, it's an insight. But remember, Dil, the Shraddha result is also insight.
But you keep on contemplating that whatever happens, that this should be this.
Whatever sense experience is experienced, you advert to Sankata Olarika Patisampanna Anicca.
Yeah.
Ara, in Prachna, you have a far more sort of, it's like Gaveshanatmaka Gatiya. Gaveshanatmaka Gatiya. It's like a seeker or a searcher, an explorer of sorts. Do you understand? Gaveshanatmaka Gatiya. Anoma, what would be an English word for that? Gaveshanatmaka Gatiya.
Exploration, is it?
It's more of a exploration sort of a thing there in the Prachna element.
Yes.
Right? Because yeah, Gaveshanatmaka Gati. Yeah. Mokhadda, what would be an English word for that?
It's exploring, no, Bhante?
Exploring.
Something, yeah.
To explore. Okay.
Yeah.
To explore. The exploring element is more Prachna. The Shraddha, how it is done is, it is adverted again and again. Is that clear? Right? It is adverted. Right? That is the Shraddha that we have, the faith that we have in the teaching. Right? In the teaching. The Prachna, in the Prachna aspect of the Prachna person, he will not come into a conclusion without solid proof. What does the proof become? The experience. Right? Now, even now, when we go on to the kilesa, right? When we start feeling the kilesa, what will happen is, if let's say a sense desire arises, at that moment you feel the weight of that sense desire. hatred-rooted consciousness arises or a conscious stream arises, what happens? You start feeling the weight of that consciousness stream, right? You start feeling the weight of that conscious stream. ඒකෙන් අපිට තේරෙනවා මෙන්න මේක බරයි, මේක ඕලාරිකයි, මේක සංකතයි. මේක මේ ඇලෙන්න සුදුසු දෙයක් නෙමෙයි මේක. කියන දෙය ඒ ප්‍රඥා ගතියෙන් තේරෙනවා එතන. ඒත් at the Shraddha technique and the Prachna technique, both of these techniques is Vipassana, but two methods of approaches. Two different methodologies of approaching the practice. Is that clear? Yes, dear.
And this, I'm trying to get a real difference between. I understand the first Shraddha because it's adverting again and again to do this. So that's very clear. But rather than, I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because exploration is also, you're still exploring, you're doing. Wouldn't be more like intuitive experience. And why I'm saying this is because in my learnings, this sati sampajanna is very often described as, so sati is mindfulness, but this sampajanna is clear comprehension. Bhikkhu Bodhi and all the other standard people is always clear comprehension.
Yeah.
Ajahn Sumedho never was happy with this, and so that's why, because I have heard this one, because comprehension is still something that you comprehension, you explore, you investigate. And what he said, that's why he always taught us that for him sati sampajanna is intuitive awareness. So the sati is awareness, and the sampajanna is still intuitive. It's not something that you comprehend or you have to think about. So I was thinking this gaveshanatmaka is more like intuitive or experiential rather than exploring, because exploring is also it's something that you do, like comprehending. Anyway, that's just because in my mind.
I would agree with you, dear. I would agree with you, because now, mind you, that it is not a beginner who is at this stage.
Yeah.
It is a person who has now broken, or rather to a certain extent, severed the ties that one has to Chakusota Gana Jiva Kaya through the same parameters of Anicca Dukkha Anatma. That is now, then, it is like a person who knows so well about snakes. Right? Wherever he might, wherever the person goes and whatever type of serpents this person sees, the person will be able to gauge what kind of snake this is. Right? It is not a beginner. Right? So where that intuitive, where that word then comes, when we use the word exploring, this is not a beginner who doesn't know anything who is exploring. This is a beginner with a certain sense of essence. Right? That essence is derived from Vipassana. Because it is the same level at which the person is going. Now, deyak diya balagana indiddi ara වැටෙන්නේ තර විදර්ශනාවෙන් එන ඒ අරමුණු තමයි වැටෙන්නේ. Is that clear? So I would agree with you there.
Thank you.
On that. So it is clear comprehension, and the clarity of that comprehension comes about because it is that same frequency and wavelength which is now increasing. Yeah. Is that clear to everyone? Is that clear? Any questions?
Bhante, can I ask the question,
Yes,
please?
of course, yeah.
No, Bhante, when you say Shraddha, it is contemplation on Sankata, Olarika, Paticcasamuppanna, Anitya. And Prachna is contemplation on actuality. Now, this is not the right example that I'm bringing in, but now when we do Buddhanusati, we just say the Buddhanusati, we practice Buddhanusati, but sometimes we try to think of the qualities and practice. Is it something like that? We just say Buddhanusati.
It is.
That is like Shraddha. But when it Prachna, we try to, understand the qualities and think of the qualities, and then we practice, but it
Yes.
takes a long time. Something. Is it something like that?
Well, the thing is, it's not the best example.
Yes,
owing to the reason that it is not a purely vipassana object.
Yeah.
Owing to the fact that it is not a purely vipassana object. Now, in the case of, now let us say, api ahara sanyava gamu. Ahara sube, right? Particular ahara sube, right? Now we are looking at a food, a type of food, right? And we try to develop a sense of ahara particular sanya, right? We know what ahara particular sanya is, right? Asu, yeah, it is a foulness of the food.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we know the food will taste good because we cooked it. Or we've eaten from this place before, or whatever. Or it smells good, right? Regardless, we know it will taste good. Now, but what do? Make a asuba arumanak වශයෙන් අපි ගන්නවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒකේ පිළිකුල් ගතිය මෙනෙහි කිරීමට කෑම දැන් ගන්නවා. දැන් මේ අර කලින් මේ රසවත් ආහාරය කියලා අපි ගත්තේ ඒ ආහාරයම අපි ගන්නවා දැන් මේ පටිකුල සංඥාවක් වශයෙන්. නේද? Right? That is Shraddha. Do you get what I mean? Right? දැන් එතන බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ කියපු ආකාරයට දැන් අපිට ඒකේ මේ කැත කුණක් නෙමෙයිනේ මේ කන්නේ. If we take the taste of it, we are not eating something which is foul. It is in a good state. However, it is prone to change. It is poor. It is lowly. Why? Because it is so prone to change. Make a kapu gamamma particular. Kapu gamamma particular. The moment you put it into your mouth and bite it and you spit it back out, no one will eat it.
So, Bhante, the actuality comes in there.
The actuality can come there. But you see, when we are looking at the food and we are contemplating on the particles, what is at play? Buduhamdru kiyepu e deni දැන් මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. Right? දැන් ඒක ශ්‍රද්ධාවෙන් අපි ගත්තොත්, if we take it to the perspective of ශ්‍රද්ධා, right? බුදුහාමුදුරන්ට තියෙන ගරුත්වය පදනම් කරාගෙන මේ ආහාරය තුල තියෙන මේ පටිකූල සංඥාව අපි වඩනවා. මෙච්චර මේ ලෝකෝත්තර සැපයක් සතුටක් අපිට විඳින්න පුළුවන් අවකාශයේ තිබෙද්දී මම මේ කාපු ගමන් පිළිකුල් වෙන මේ රූපාරම්මයකට ඇලිලා කටයුතු කරනවා. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, Bhante, I get it. Thank you.
Right? එතන තමයි දැන් මේ ශ්‍රද්ධාව කියන දේ ශ්‍රද්ධාවෙන් දැන් අපි බලන්නේ උතන. Right? දැන් ඕක අපිට ප්‍රඥාවෙන් බලන්නත් පුළුවන්, which is දැන් මේ ප්‍රඥාවෙන් බලන කෙනා දැන් ප්‍රඥාව යම්කිසි මට්ටමකට it must be strong, no?
Yeah.
The person who is going to get it through the prajna aspect, what will that person or how will that person see it? That person will give more prominence to what? What is it going to be? The nature of that change. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, Bhante. Right?
The Shraddha Pudgala will give more prominence to the fact of the word of the Buddha and what its gradual change will be. And the fear arising from attaching and clinging on to something that is so prone to change. Yeah?
Yes, Bhante, got it. Thank you very much, Bhante. Yeah, Bhante.
Does everyone understand the difference? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Now, this peace, right? This peace that we experience, this peace in Pali is known as Shanta, right? S-A-N-T-A. Santa. Santa, not Shanta. Santa. Right? Santa. Santa is the peaceful nature. Santa is also another word given to Nirvana. Right? The absolute extreme of Santa is Nirvana. It's not happiness, it's Santa. Right? The peaceful quality, peaceful nature. This peaceful nature, now see, මේ විදිහට තමයි අපේ මේ ලෞකික ඕලාරික මේ මනස මේ කෙලෙස් බරිත මනස නිවන පැත්තට හරවන්නේ මේ ආකාරයට. This is the way that we maneuver our minds to suit and fit the experience of nirvana in the future. Do you understand? This is what we do in the present moment, which is this. Gradually start valuing peace. Start valuing peace. Initially, it might start with, let us say, the sila. Not getting yourself into muck-ups, where these muck-ups that you have and do will sort of come to sort of bite you in the back again. Right? It might start with sila. Then it will go into actually being good to people, where you have peace in your community. Right? Peace in your community, good relationships, where you can go to sleep without having to worry whether you have someone who's going to break in and stab you, right? And then it will go into the mental bit, which we are going to talk about now. The true peace, or peace that we will directly be able to experience within this life, is where the dependency over the five senses is severed. Right? Dependency, expectations over the five senses, that the five senses will maintain itself, the five senses will be healthy, the five senses will be this, five senses will be that. That expectation needs to be got rid of. That is where a person will experience their first form of bliss. And we have all experienced this bliss to a certain extent when we let go. Right? Then the bliss that comes, right, as we sort of progress in that process of letting go, peacefulness will arrive or arise within us through the jhanas and then into the vipassanas. Right? This sense of peace in the vipassana, in the manarammana or the manodvara, is to do in letting go of the dependencies or the pleasures that comes through sensuous pleasure, the distractions, the need for distraction, any form of attachment or to delusion or lust and friction, right? Lobha, dosa, moha, right? Disattaching yourself, or rather selecting peace that comes through non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, and not in any form of what those paths that arise as a result of greed, hatred, delusion. Do you understand? Now, we humans, we mundane beings, sometimes assume, let us take revenge as an example. Right? Revenge as an example. Someone says something catty to us, right? I could not respond properly. So now I'm quite upset with myself for not having come up with a good rebuke to that person's catty mouth, right? Quite upset. Right? But we are now planning, even imagining a good retort to such an instance, right? Very, normal things, right? Then the person who chooses, right, let's go of the dependency that one has over greed, hatred, delusion to bring about happiness. ඒ මුවාවෙන් අපි ජීවත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එවැනි අවකාශයක් අපේ මනස තුළ ඇති කරගන්න ඇත්තටම ධර්මයේ අවශ්‍ය ඒ හින්දා. Now, because if we take, for example, delusion is a fog, it's a mist. It is not easy to see through delusion. But what is clear exists with clarity. Dhamma. Right? Dhamma. Then metana thamai, for the kilesas to let go of certain kilesas that are difficult to see, and we do not possess the power of mind or the clarity of mind to have penetrative wisdom with regards to some of these kilesas, such as delusion, for example, which is a very difficult thing to see, right? Because we can't see it. It's right before our eyes. People around us can very easily see it sometimes, but not us. And we might be able to see theirs as well, but we are unable to see our own, right? Because we are so blinded by it. That is the main way delusion operates, right? That is where Dharma learning, Dharma practice, and of course Vipassana goes hand in hand. It helps one another, right? With that Vipassana and Dhamma together, right, we start now experiencing, whilst we let go of the dependency. Now we have not let go of alobha, lobha, dosa, moha. We have not, but we've let go of the dependency we have on it. Right? Gavvot gahanama, bannot baninama. Right? If she says something to me, I will say something. Do you get what I mean? Sometimes it can be very, very innocent, and even sometimes socially acceptable, right? Sometimes even socially acceptable, but not acceptable in terms of Dhammic practice leading towards nirvana. Do you understand? We increase our standard of life or standard of thought, which affects the livelihood and the way that we live. Yeah. This comes from the sheer respect to Dhamma. This comes from the determination and virya that we have. Monade kalat. I will not compromise what I have. And what is it that I have? My practice. Right? My practice that will keep me from hell, the hellish states, and further sankharas leading to pain in the future. I mean, what a pain to have people talk behind your back. What a pain to have people stab you in the back. What a pain to be ill-treated by your superiors at work. What a pain it is to be not, you get what I mean? All of these gross things are karmas, no? Are karmas. The burden of these karmas are created to this from the power of this sankhara. Godata මං ආපහු වැටෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? Godata මං ආපහු වැටෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? That determination is important in this path, because there is so much meditation can go, but to overcome certain hurdles in your meditation, you need the Dhamma. That is why Buddhas arise in this world, everyone. That is how Buddhas guide us in the path, because sometimes we actually do not, sometimes most of the time, we do not see. That is why then Kalyana Mitras, Buddha says, because Kalyana Mitras will tell you to your face without any sort of reservation, because Kalyana Mitras are not there for your money or your sort of, good word or whatnot, not to get things out of you. Kalyana Mitras are there to simply support you. Right? So they say it to your face. Do you get what I mean? Then when you realize and understand those hindrances operating in your life, now you work in letting go, letting go, letting go. This higher standard of life is called panita. Panita. Right? Panita, which is to do with what is superior, fine, exquisite. there are certain, although a certain container is made of clay, not all containers of clay can hold water, right? Not all containers made of clay can hold water. Some of them have holes in them. Some of them, the pores are far too big, right? There are containers that are made to hold water. Just because you and I are Trihetuka Pudgalas does not mean that we are able to attain nirvana. We have to mold ourselves into something that can attain nirvana. And what is that something? That process starts by you raising your standard and quality of thought, which will change your way of life. Do you understand? මේ ලෝකේ තියෙන අරමුණුත් එක්ක ගැටි අපි ජීවත් වෙනවා නම් ඒ පුද්ගලයා කවදාවත් නිවන් දකින්නේ නැහැ. බුදුහාමුදුරු ධර්මපදයක අපිට කියනවා. මොන බාධාව ආවත් මම මේ නිවන් මාර්ගයේ තොර මාර්ගයකින් මම කටයුතු කරන්නේ නැහැ කියන දේ බුදුහාමුදුරු කියනවා. Right? What is insinuated there? The importance of determination. That determination, that strong determination, everyone, is so important when it comes to us forgiving people, forgiving ourselves, right? Moving on from gross hindrances, right? Because at the end of the day, just like what we have now learned with Indriya Bhavana, the sense experience is Indriya, Arammana and Sanya. That is all ajjatika. The hatred that I have, it is all internal. The sense experience is internal. It is nothing to do with that person. This hatred that I have is built in me towards an image of a person that I have built through my expectations, through my reasoning as to why that person shouldn't be doing that. But that person is human. That person is with hindrance. That person, mind, has alobha, adosa, amoha, as well as lobha, dosa, moha. That we refuse to see. Why? Because of my expectation that the person would treat me right. My expectation that the person will not lie to me. That my expectation that this worldly being who is also tainted by the kilesas will not enact those kilesas to attack this object. But they did. Expectation. That expectation was placed by you. Those expectations were broken because you placed them. It is almost as if expecting a pot with holes to carry the water. It will never. That is all within this. That is a very gross example of Indriya Bhavana. A very gross example of Indriya Bhavana, right? A very worldly example of Indriya Bhavana. That is what we realize. When we realize, no, I cannot expect that. If this is the human nature, how can I wish for human to operate other than by its nature? That is Indriya Bhavana in its most simplest mundane terms, right? That we progress into the kilesas now. Yeah. Yes, Dil. Dil, you're muted.
So just like what you say, that Indriya Bhava is because of our expectations of others' behavior, which is because you're not seeing it. That in the world, there are much few people who are practicing. Most of the people that you're going to come across will not be thinking this high sense of idea. So, but because we are not seeing it the way it is, we expect them, then the expectations are broken. That's one thing. In a very simpler way, we thought before Indriya Bhavana, I remember going to one of a talk even by I'm a student, and he was saying that when you buy an expensive glass or object, just see it broken when you see it, because you are always expecting anything glass, if you drop it will break. Somebody strikes something, break. So I remember she brought a glass and said, now you're all thinking this glass is beautiful. But if you realize that everything is impermanent, so in a way that, like here, it's a much more higher level, because this is to do with your Indriya, then you're expecting people to have, these very high standards, when in reality, how many Sotapannas or people on the way to Sotapanna do we see who are practicing to this level? So we are going to get disappointed, and as for when we up. So thank you for that. Can I just ask you one more thing, Bhante? We were talking about Prachna and Shraddha. So now when we were beginning to do Vipassana, it's Shraddha-anusari and Prajna-anusari people. You divide people, so that some people who are more faith-based in their practice and some people who are more wisdom-based. And we also, I remember some people said that sometimes if you are more Shraddha-anusari, then maybe start with Samatha Bhavana. And if you are more Prajna-anusari, you start with Vipassana. I've heard that also told at the very beginning of meditation when you started. But here in this case, both the sadhana and prajna, both within vipassana, the way of doing Indriya Bhavana. Just that one is we are adverting to it more and more, another one is a more intuitive sort of experiential thing that thank you, Bhante. So does it then mean that if you are a Shraddha-anusari person, that you would prefer to take this Shraddha method of...
No. So let me clear that up. So when it comes to Saddha-anusari and Prajna-anusari, it is not talking about a specific methodology, no, a technique of meditation. It's not. It's talking about a way a person operates, right?
Yes.
Way a person's mind operates.
Yes, Bhante.
So certain practitioners, when it comes to Shraddha, Virya, Prajna, that is the way their personality is.
Yes.
The way their minds go on, right?
Yeah.
That is all that we are talking about. So when we talk about this Prachna and Shraddha, in this regard, we are talking about that same thing.
Okay, right.
We are talking about that same thing. However, we are not talking about, yes, there are certain sort of techniques which are suggested to Saddhanusari, Dhammanusari, Viryanusari, and Prajnanusari. But we are not talking about those techniques. We are talking about the way the mind operates, or the way the mind chooses to be.
Yes.
Or to take an object.
Yes. So does it mean that if you are that way personality, that you would probably prefer to do more of this? Or if you are that way kind of person, that this methodology you might do? Is there any connection in that or no? That's
Not really. Not really.
Thank you, Bhante.
No.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bhante. Very clear. Sorry.
All right. Any other questions, anyone? Right. So, when we reach Santa, මේ සාන්ත ගති අපිට විදර්ශනාවෙන් දකින්න පටන් ගත්තාම, when we start seeing and realizing, experiencing peace through our vipassana, that is upekkha. That is vipassana upekkha. Do you understand, everyone? That is vipassana upekkha. Okay. When we see, now what else could be upekkha? Just think about it, right? When we experience an object as Vedana, it is somanassa, domanassa, upekkha, or adukkama sukha. That is a Vedana. Vipassana sapa, vipassana, this sapa, dukkha, and then we have the sense of upekkha, right? We experience a sense of sapa and dukkha through our vipassana, which we turn into, positions where we can cultivate more vipassana based on that bliss or pain, right? Then we come and arrive at a state of peace. This state of peace is synonymous with upekkha, vipassana upekkha. It is a position of being. It is a position unhindered. It is a position where you are not trying to balance through, the grappling of pain or pleasure. Do you understand? It is a position that comes to be because of balance. It is a position that comes to be because the struggle is not there. Do you understand? That position is Vipassana Upekkha, right? That Vipassana Upekkha, when we start realizing this piece, right, then we come to slowly, but surely maturing the path. Let us think about a position where we started experiencing peace. Let us take Anapanasati. For days or weeks or even months, we tried at it to see the involuntary breath. Initially, we couldn't, but then slowly we started to be able to, right? Maybe even after months or maybe years, we are still unable to, right? But there are positions where even with, let us say, Vedananupassana or Kayanupassana or Chittanupassana, we are able to arrive at a state rooted in peace. It is absolutely rooted in peace. Why? Because you're not shaken from that position, whatever you experience. Right? And the experience itself becomes absolute and utter peace. Why? Because through the letting go of that which is gross, through the letting go of that which is sankata, through the letting go of the mind's dependency or the mind's craving for that which is impermanent. Do you understand? That peace always arrives. The mind, when we take Anapanasati, the mind experienced peace when it finally was able to realize how to stop controlling. Right? The mind realized peace in Vedananupassana initially when you finally learned how to navigate the mind and realize that without the mind that there is no Vedana. Without the mind making or rather contributing to the proliferation of the Vedana, there is no Vedana. Isn't that so, everyone? Right? In the Indriya Bhavana, just because when we do not give in to Chakusota Gahana Jivha Kaya, the mind is at a state of peace. Do you realize? Do you understand? There you have nirvana. That experience of peace multiplies and multiplies and keeps on growing. When you tell yourself, no, I am no longer going to be, I'm no longer going to be having sugar. I'm diabetic. I'm no longer going to be having sugar. And you do it just because it's the right decision to be made. You have the peace of not having to worry about your sugar. That multiplies on from the mundane to the low mundane to the upper mundane, from the upper to the Rupa Vachara, Arupa Vachara, and then the low Kottaras. Right? When you are hurt and you want to, like a serpent, get your revenge, get your pound of flesh. And then when you say no, these are only emotions, these are states impermanent. Right? In whatever so ways, right? You choose that which is not dependent upon the five senses or the kilesas. Then you choose that which is at peace, a position which is at peace. Do you understand, everyone? Is that clear? Right? The longer explanation of the Indriya Bhavana would be the Satipatthana Sutra itself. Okay? Yes, dear. You're muted.
You explained, Bhante, I'm sorry for disturbing, that you explained that without the mind, that without there no state of peace. Now, in that Sala Sutta, maybe it's quite different, but there are two arrows. The first arrow everyone experience, but with this Vipassana, second arrow you don't. Now, when you say without the mind that there's no Vedana, are you then saying that because we are after all a five aggregate fellow with nervous systems and all kinds of things, are we saying that we won't experience even that first arrow also, or are you saying only the second arrow?
Well, we are talking about a practitioner. We are talking about not the ultimate truth. We are talking about the sense of course, even in the ultimate sense, if mind is there, there is Vedana, right?
Yeah. The physical pain, but the mental pain with the mouth and the mind won't be there, the proliferation. That's what you're explaining.
No, physical pain also, if the mind is not adverting to it, then it will not be there, right?
That's what I want to find out. Even the physical
it will not be there. So, for example, when you're not giving, when you're in bodily pain, your shoulders are burning or aching, your legs are aching or burning from sitting in meditation, all of a sudden everything goes it just disappears. That is a mind.
Yeah, so when the Buddha said, now he had all this peace and everything, but he said, my body is like, I don't know, bag of bones in something or something. And so he knew that he was 80 odd, and that's why when Ananda didn't respond at once, he was said. So he realized the infirmities of his age, didn't he? He knew, his mind was so much at peace.
I don't know what you just said, you mumbled.
Okay, let me say it clear, Bhante. Sorry about it. Okay.
You're not talking to yourself, you're talking to me.
Okay, Bhante, sorry. I thought I was clear, but you've explained that I wasn't. Now, the Buddha was talking about the exact singular words, I can't, but he said, no, though he has reached all these states and where his mind was completely at peace, but yet his body was like an 80-year-old, it was like, but the parts are worn out and basically gone. So that's what I was referring to, Bhante. Maybe I'm clearer now. So when he was referring to that, does he mean that whether he could not advert to that and then he's all right, but if he doesn't advert to it, then he can feel the effects of the aging process of his body at 80 years.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I want to say. Thank you, Bhante. Sorry.
All right, everyone. So that is, do we have any other questions? Yes, Mala? Yes.
Hi, Hamdurani. Sorry, I really don't understand a little bit. Can you say it again in another way somehow, please?
Which one?
If you don't mind. The explain this can't explain this now. The last bit.
The last bit. So what I was speaking of is with regards to, or when it comes to peace, right? That sense of peace arrives at a position or where the mind is able to operate beyond or not conditioned by, that's the word. When the mind is able to operate from the conditioned, right? That is, for example, when the mind is dependent upon physical pleasure, the mind will always have physical pain. When we let go of both of these ends, physical pain and pleasure, that is to say, let go of the expectation that we have over physical pain and pleasure, then we come to a state of peace, right? At a state of peace. This happens with all regards, right? In all regards of meditation. When you take Anapanasati, right? We have a sense initially. We want to experience the involuntary breath. We don't want to control the breath, but we also want to feel the breath, right? Now that anchor of wanting to feel the breath controls the breath. That's another sense of control. So what do we end up doing? We can't experience the involuntary breath. It becomes a voluntary breath. We control the breath, right? We control the breath. Then we go on to the Vedananupassana, when we observe the sensations. When we observe the sensations At first, when the sensations are so, it's so active, right? And we want to be free of the sensations. But when we want to be free of the sensation, we are trying to again control the sensation to being something more pleasant and easy to bear. But that itself is control. That then further multiplies the sensation, makes a painful feeling even worse. But when we are able to maneuver the mind to now arrive at a state where we let go of the need to control inertly, now the pain, the sensations, all sensations disappear absolutely, completely, right? The sense of peace there.
Yes, sometimes I get a headache sometimes. So what do I do? Then after that, I don't do anything after that at all.
Well, the thing is, now we are talking with regards to meditation, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Why don't you try a Panadol? It always works for me. Well, the thing is, what am I to say to that? Well, something that always works is, of course, it's something that you have to then sort of develop, a skill that you have to, which is not giving into the pain, not complaining. Now, for example, when it's cold and you stop complaining about the cold is no more so cold, isn't it? Right? It is a proven fact. If you're complaining about everything that is wrong in your life, and when you stop complaining, you finally things are not as bad as what you first assumed it to be. See, you're giving into, you're playing into it, right? When your headache is bad, right? When your headache is bad, or when you're having a headache and you're giving into it, you're complaining about it and all of these things, right? You actually make it even worse. Right? Of course, there are times where the headache is actually bad and you just need to lie down. So then go and lie down or drink something or whatever, But the sensations, as far as the sensations go, yes, we might not be able to, when it's so gross, we might not be able to sometimes control it, especially when you're going through acute amounts of pain. But even what meditators who are able to, they are able to sort of let go of even acute amounts of pain. Yeah. All right. So yes, Mala. You had something to ask? No? Okay. All right. So that is, everyone, the end of then what we are going to be discussing on Indriya Bhavana. Okay. I hope the Indriya Bhavana practice has been made clear through these couple of weeks that we've been discussing, and that you understand it far more sort of properly, right? And I hope that it offers you insight into developing and further cultivating your other practices as well. So, all right, everyone. So take care, and I will see you next Monday. Mind you that the Sunday meditation is not going to happen, please, because I have a session in Cambridge on the day. So take care and all the very best, everyone. Teruvan Sannai.
Teruvan Sannai.
Teruvan Sannai. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.